Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. So in today's video we're going to be talking about why do students struggle more with the CXC paper 2 exam versus the paper 1 exam. If you're interested, go ahead and like, comment, share and subscribe. And if you're doing CXC this year, you can go ahead and check the description down below where you can find CXC lessons, the CXC study guide and all that stuff down below in the description. All right, so why do students study more with the paper 2 than the paper 1 basically? And the first reason is this: the paper 2 is a free response paper, meaning that you have to write out your answers. The paper 1 exam is MCQ, meaning that the answer is already on the paper. For the paper 2 exam, the answer is not there. All you have is a question and you have lines that you are supposed to write the answer on. Now, most students struggle with this because you have to remember what the answer is. You have to think, so it's a whole thing, right? So you have to be thinking, you have to use a lot more brain power in the paper 2 exam than in the paper 1 exam in order to pass it, because on the paper 2 exam you have a certain amount of questions and then you have different sections, and in most cases, in almost all of them, all the CXC subjects, you have to answer all of the questions. If you're not supposed to answer all the questions, you will see it in the instructions at the front of the page. And that's another thing as well, is that students do not read the instructions on the front of the page. I am somebody who I never assume anything, so I'm gonna read it to make sure say yeah, answer all. I'm not gonna assume say I'm supposed to only answer section A and section B and not section C. I would not assume anything like that. And in most cases, even before you go into your exam, your teachers will say, listen, everything is mandatory. Section C will have an option, but A and B, you have to answer everything, right? So in most cases, your teacher already kind of inform you a little bit about what to expect going into the exam. But essentially, in the paper 2 exam, you have to think a lot more, right, than in the paper 1 exam. The next reason why people struggle more in the paper 2 exam is because of a lack of time management, right? So in the paper 2 exam, it is free response, right? You get a certain amount of questions in a very limited time. In the MCQ, in the paper 1 exam, let's just say you did not have enough, you did not know everything, right? You can still shade something, you can just pick an answer because the answer is there and it's 50-50 if it's right or not, right? In the paper 2 exam, there's no answer on there, there's no guessing, there's no prompt, there's no hint. It's either you know it or you honestly don't. And if you're in the exam and you see a question and you don't remember the answer, you're going to be wasting time sitting there looking at one question when you have the other pages to complete. Another thing that really hurts students in the exam is that they don't have proper time management, because if they start the paper and the first question they don't know, and the second question they don't know, they just sit over the first two questions, and let's just say that there are 5 other pages that they could have answered, but instead they wasted time sitting at the questions that they cannot answer. That is how you lose time in the exam. So it's not about what you don't know, it's about what you do know. So always answer what you do know first in the exam, right? So that's another reason why students have it even more harder in the paper 2, because paper 1, whether you know or you don't know, you gotta pick an answer, you call it a day. In the paper 2, you can't pick an answer, there's no answer there. So you have to be thinking, you have to be searching your brain, a lot of brain power, so your brain is working, to figure out what is the answer, right? What is the answer to the question? And then you have to write it on the line. So as I said before, time management, and also the fact that it's a free response paper, right? So there's no answer on the paper. You have to think it, you have to literally recall it and write it down on the paper. Another reason why students struggle more in the paper 2 exam is a lack of structure in their answers. So, and this can even cause you to fail, because let's just say that you're somebody that you don't really know how to articulate yourself, like at all, you don't do it well, and you're in the exam, you know the answer, right? But let's just say you know put it in the right, you write the answer, but you know in the right, the sentence not really 100%, if you know what I mean. Like you word it complex, or your word it kind of mixed up or all over the place, and when the marker see the paper, yes, them kind of know you know what you do, but your sentence need to flip around the other way, because you realize, all right, the structure of your answer not really 100%, like what you have at the bottom should have been at the top, and what at the top should have been at the bottom. So they might see with you in certain cases and say, okay, well, them know, but them just cannot, they just don't know how to structure their questions properly. And in some cases they might be lenient, or in other cases where, let's just say, it's maybe social studies or something, and they're marking and way down at the end of the essay them say, okay, this should not be done here, then you're going to lose the marks for it, because those, that basically goes against the overall principle, or just the overall format of how the exam is supposed to be done. So basically students struggle more with even just structuring your answers to the questions, because as I said before, sometimes the question is not, sometimes the answer is not wrong, but it's just not structured properly. It just kind of all over the place, and you know the answer is in it, but it's just very confusing to read even though the answer is in it. Another reason why students struggle more with the paper 2 than the paper 1 is really because of limited practice. No, when you're preparing for the exam, most people, general advice that most people usually give is, okay, you need to study for your paper 2, and they might say, okay, for the paper 1, go ahead and watch your past paper videos, yeah. But at the same time, if you're somebody who has never been exposed to the format of the exam, like you've never been exposed to see, okay, this is how a paper 2 question looks like, this is what it looks like, this is how the exam looks, these are the type of questions, this is how it's structured, then you might go in the exam because you did not have enough practice answering those type of questions. Because let's just say you never know, so you should have 3 paragraphs, or let's just say you're doing social studies and you know that you get a like essay at, in the paper 2 for social studies, whether tourism or consumerism or regional integration, whatever the case may be, and you have an option on the social studies paper 2 exam, you may go in there and your teacher for some reason did not teach you how to properly write an essay, or structure your essay. Maybe you never ever learned it in English, and you go in there and your essay was just all over the place. You try to prove a point, but at the same time, what was in the middle should have been at the top, and what at the top should have been in the middle. The conclusion are really concluding, and you realize that you're a little bit all over the place. So in those cases, you can lose marks in the exam because you did not practice before. So especially those exams that maths, like for example, to me, maths, English, social studies, those are exams that I think you definitely need to practice because of how those exams are. For maths, you have to practice the maths, because when you're going there, you won't see the exact same question, but maths is a very hard subject, and a lot of people struggle with it. Because I think the year that I did it, they said only 49%, so basically less than half passed. Less than half of the people who did maths passed the year that I did it, and that's crazy. Less than half is passing. So practice for English, practice for the paper 2, because if you don't practice writing, you won't know the little rules, you won't realize, okay, I have a little grammar problem, right? I have a little this problem. Sometimes I forgot my full stop, sometimes I not put my comma them, sometimes I not use my colon them, sometimes I not use my exclamation mark, sometimes I not use things properly, right? And that is why English you have to practice, right? And every time you write something, everybody knows that, even authors, people who publish books and stuff, they know that when you write the first time, you have to read it again and proofread it, because we are human, and when you write, sometimes your brain is a flow. You have to read it over, and no matter how good you are at English or whatever the case may be, everybody knows you have to go over it again and read it. But sometimes we left out the, sometimes we left out the and, sometimes we left out the comma because we write so fast. And in the exam, when information are flowing and writing, right, you have to proofread and grammar correct afterwards in that English exam. That's so you need to practice. For social studies, for that essay portion at the back where you get the option, you have to also practice and say, okay, which question I'm going to answer. You can even pre-plan it and say, okay, I'm going to answer the tourism question, or I'm going to answer regional integration question. You can plan it from beforehand and say, all right, I feel like I understand this topic the most, so when I go in here, I don't know what the question is going to ask, but I'm going to answer this question. right? So practice and say, okay, maybe I will start with like the introduction and then go in and explain my points and then come down, right? So you have to practice, and that's why some students feel in paper 2 they don't practice. Another reason why students might have a hard time with paper 2 more than the paper 1 is just it's more anxiety causing, if that makes sense. So a student might go into both the paper 1 exam and both the paper 2 exam, but in the paper 2 exam, because it's worth more marks, it's worth the most marks, it's worth like half the marks, and you're going there, your anxiety is high, you panic, and there's a theory says, okay, this is worth a lot, this determines if I pass or fail, and it's just the anxiety that gets you in the exam, and you just anxiety is to act up basically. And for the paper 1 you might nervous as well, but you're not really that, you know what I mean, like you know it only worth this percent or whatever, and you say okay, you're nervous but not nervous, not too nervous to the point where you cannot function, if that makes sense. So people are not as nervous for the paper 1, but they are more nervous for the paper 2 because it's for the most part marks, and it's also the larger paper with more questions, longer time to complete, and it calls on your memory, brain power, everything. That's why students have a much more harder time. In the paper 1 exam, it really requires you to use recognition in order to recognize the answer on the paper. For the paper 2 exam, it's really testing for a recall. How well can you remember the information that you know and put it down in writing? For the paper 1, you just need to recognize the answer. You have A, B, C, D. Recognize which one is the answer in the situation, and in the paper 2 is recall. You have to be able to recall, remember the information, and then reproduce it on the paper, right? So those are just some reasons why students fail the paper 2 more, or they struggle with the paper 2 more than the paper 1. Those are just some reasons. Anyways guys, this is the end of this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.